In this video, we are going to learn how to solve equations involving inverse trigonometric functions. So your first step into finding the exact solution of each of these equations is to get that inverse function by itself on one side of the equation. So in this case, I'm going to want to divide each side by 3. So I'll have sine inverse of x is equal to pi over 3. And now I need to get the x variable by itself by using that definition of an inverse function. So by moving the sine inverse to the other side of the equation, I'll get x is equal to now sine, no longer inverse, of pi over 3. So now the problem comes down to what is sine of pi over 3. And hopefully your studies with the unit circle can help you get to that conclusion very quickly, that it is square root 3 over 2. Let's definitely try another example. Now let's look what we need to do if we have a coefficient inside the inverse function. So now I'm going to start by, again, divide each side by 3 to get the inverse function by itself. So I'll have cosine inverse of 2x is equal to 2 pi over 3. And then I'll get rid of the cosine inverse so I can get the 2x by itself next. So 2x will be equal to cosine of 2 pi over 3, which puts us into our second quadrant. And this is cosine of 2 pi over 3 would be negative 1/2. And now I'm just solving this equation, which means dividing each side by 2 or multiplying by 1/2, giving me negative 1/4. So again, even if there's like any sort of expression inside the inverse function, once you get rid of the inverse function and evaluate that trig function, now it becomes a normal linear equation or quadratic equation, anything you may get from there. Now let's look at negative 4 tangent inverse of x is equal to pi. Here I would divide by negative 4, give me tangent inverse of x is equal to negative pi over 4. Now x should equal tangent of negative pi over 4. And now this is an odd function, so that negative angle on the inside of it, that negative can come to the outside because it's an odd function. Give me negative tangent of pi over 4. And now what is tangent of pi over 4? It is 1, so our answer becomes x is equal to negative 1. And those are some of the more like simple 1, 2, 3 step equations. Now let's look at when we have more than one inverse function. And here I see I have 2 cosine inverses. So I need to combine those 2 expressions onto one side. So we only have one inverse trig function. So I'll subtract 2 cosine inverse of x from both sides of my equation, giving me 2 cosine inverse of x minus 2 pi is equal to 0. Now I'm going to start to get the cosine inverse function by itself on one side by adding 2 pi. And then dividing by 2, so cosine inverse of x is equal to pi, which now, when I take the cosine of both sides of my equation, I'll get x equal to cosine of pi, which is the far left point on my unit circle, which means that the x-coordinate on that spot should be negative 1. So x is equal to negative 1. Let's try one more. So here I'm going to have to move everything to one side, but here I already have something on my right side, so I'll add 2 pi to the right while subtracting 2 sine inverse of pi to the left, giving me 3 sine inverse of x is going to be equal to negative pi. Dividing by 3, I'll get sine inverse of x is equal to negative pi over 3. And now I'll have x is equal to sine of negative pi over 3. Sine is an odd function, so I can move that negative to the outside of it, giving me negative sine of pi over 3. And sine of pi over 3, which we discussed earlier, is just the square root of 3 over 2. So this answer becomes negative square root of 3 over 2. And that is how you solve equations involving inverse trigonometric functions.